Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this video we are going to be learning how to name and write formulas for covalent compounds. Okay, so you are going to be given this chart that you can use on your assessments and also with practice in class. It's called our flow chart. So it's really important that you know how to use it. So first you need to know, well, what's a covalent bond? A covalent bond is made up of only nonmetals, or it can also have metalloids, and it involves sharing electrons. So if I give you the formula, you want to look at your first element, and if it is a nonmetal, you know it's a covalent compound. So in order to figure out our name, what we need to do is we need to figure out how many of each element we have. So in this example of water, my first element is hydrogen. How many atoms do I have of hydrogen? I have 2. I'm going to be looking at my subscript that follows my atom. So I have 2 hydrogens and I have 1 oxygen. Now, if you don't see a number written after your element symbol, that just indicates there's only 1. So we don't want to write 1, we just need to understand that that just means 1. So once I figure out my element and how many I have, I'm then going to look at my prefixes. So if we are naming our first element, we have hydrogen, and we know we have 2 of them. So I'm going to find the prefix for 2, which is di, and I'm going to put that right in front of my hydrogen. So it's dihydrogen, and I have 1 oxygen, so it's going to be mono for 1. And I'm not going to have a double vowel, so it's not going to be monoxide. Instead, I'm just going to drop that second O, and I'm going to change my ending. So oxygen is going to not be oxygen, it's instead going to become oxide. We want to change our ending to IDE. So water is really dihydrogen monoxide. In our next example, we have NH3. I'm going to look up the symbol for nitrogen. There it is, nitrogen. I have 1 of them. And then I'm going to look for H. H is hydrogen, and I have 3 of them. Now I'm going to name my compound. Notice that I did not use the prefix mono on my first element. So if I look at my flow chart, it says write your first element's name, which we did, nitrogen. How many atoms for the first element? We only have 1, so I'm not going to use a prefix. Then I'm going to go to the second element. I'm going to write its name, hydrogen. How many atoms do we have? 3. So then I'm going to find my prefix for tri, and I'm going to put it in front of my hydrogen. I'm then going to change my ending to IDE. So hydrogen will become hydride. All right, now let's look at this third example. We have nitrogen and we have oxygen. We have 1 of each atom. Nitrogen is not going to have mono because it's the first element. Remember, the first element, it does not have a prefix if there's only 1. Now, I only have 1 oxygen, but I have to indicate that. I cannot just write nitrogen oxide. That doesn't tell me how many oxygens I have. I have to use my prefix for 1, which is mono, and I'm going to put it in front of oxygen and then change my ending to IDE. In this last example, we have carbon and we have nitrogen. 3 carbons and 4 nitrogens. I'm going to write the element for carbon. I'm going to find my prefix for tri, put it in front of carbon. I'm not changing the ending on any of my first elements. For my second element, I'm going to use the prefix for 4, which is tetra, and then I'm going to change my ending for nitrogen to nitride. Okay, so that is how you use your flowchart for naming covalent compounds. Now let's look at how do we write the formulas for covalent compounds. So if I give you the chemical name, now we want to break it apart and figure out what the prefixes mean. So first you need to look up your element symbols. So my first element is going to be carbon. So my symbol is going to be C. I do not have a prefix, so that tells me that I have one carbon. I didn't mean prefix. Yeah, I didn't mean prefix, sorry. So I don't have anything in front of carbon, so that means I just have one. Now it says disulfide. So di means two. So that means I have two sulfurs. So it's going to be CS2. Now, if you're looking at sulfide and you're wondering how did she get sulfur, remember we always change our endings to IDE. So you're going to want to go and find the element that starts with sulf, which is sulfur. All right, the second example, we have disulfur trioxide. So my first element is sulfur, so I'm going to write my symbol S. Di means two, so I'm going to write 2 after my S. And then I have oxide. Oxide comes from oxygen, so I'm going to write O for oxygen. And then tri means 3, so I'm going to write my 3 after my oxygen. All right, in the next example, we have diphosphorus pentasulfide. My symbol for phosphorus is P. My symbol for sulfur, which turns into sulfide, is S. Di is for my first element, which is phosphorus, and di means 2. So I'm going to write the 2 after my P. Penta means 5. So I'm going to write the 5 after my S for sulfide. All right, in this last example, we have phosphorus mononitride. There's no prefix for phosphorus, so that tells me I only have one of those P's. So that's why I write just P. For nitrogen, which becomes nitride in the chemical name, I have a mono. That means I have one nitrogen. So my formula is just going to be PN.